Looks like I did everything but put the new picture up. Oops. All right, folks, let's get started. Bam. Winston going nuts at the FedEx people. Come on now. All right, folks, welcome to What Are the Odds with Barnes and Baris. I'm one host, Rich Baris, the People's Pundit, one half of the show here. Barnes will be here in a few, as always. Look, actually, we had a totally different idea for this show today, but we're under the impression we were going to get this verdict and wanted to talk about it because I feel like there's been a page-turning situation here in the country, even if the ruling class and the media aren't catching on to it yet. So we talked a lot in the last 2 weeks about whether or not, or how are the media going to deal with this loss? How's the Democratic Party going to deal with this loss? How are these social cultural warriors going to deal with this loss? Because, of course, it is a major loss for them. They threw everything out at people. They thought they had it after 2020. They moved forward, full steam ahead in trying to push their vision of the world on everyone, which was rejected. And the media is trying to deal with their irrelevancy. And a lot of them, you could see, were trying to make some gesture as if they were learning their lesson and they were going to they were going to conduct some introspection for once. And then, they were going to come back and be a renewed media. And I told you, what are the odds of that? Exactly 0. That is not going to happen. Ruling classes may pretend to be something that they aren't, but failed ruling classes just move into deeper and deeper deception until they are eventually destroyed. And that's the way human civilization works. All right, so, you could see it in Morning Joe this morning, that clip of which I don't even have. But let's get on to this verdict before we get into anything else here. We'll give you some background before Barnes comes on. For those who don't know who Daniel Penny is and what happened last week, the prosecutor had basically attempted, is that Laura or Robert? It's Robert. The prosecutor had basically attempted to, and you know what? I'm not a lawyer. Let's let Barnes do this. All right. Let's let Barnes come in and do this. And then I'll play a thing from Daniel Penny real quick, which was basically like his testimony. Don't you wish someone like me was there if you and your family were on that subway? Robert, welcome to What Are the Odds, brother. Merry Christmas, Robert. Merry Christmas. I'm throwing them around. I'm loving it. How you doing, man?
Good. The great outcome for the Penny case. Got another person who never should have been prosecuted, but was because of the inanity and insanity of New York.
I mean, Robert, maybe I should just play this clip for people who aren't totally familiar with this case. So I'm going to first play the Penny thing. Then I have the clip. I have some footage to give some people an idea, because listening to BLM after this verdict, it's like, oh, we were just being loud. These people were terrified. And I'm going to show a clip if you were on that subway, you wish someone had the balls, like Daniel Penny had the balls, to get up and do something and get that under control. They were afraid. They were calling. They were like, oh my God, where's NYPD? Someone call the NYPD. I mean, it's textbook, because of course it's a liberal city. And this is textbook leftists who rely on government to do basically everything for them, including keep them safe. And it's a real, this case really shows you the difference between red and blue America. And it's true. Where red America is a do-it-yourself. They are DIY America, where it's like, you know what? I don't need big government. I'll protect my damn self. You can't have my guns. I'll protect my damn self. Someone's terrorizing 50 people in a subway car. I will deal with it myself. And then you have blue America that cowers on the floor. And then when something happens, and God forbid you overstep and you're a vigilante for defending yourself, and not just you, but other people around you, when that happens, you get charged because you filled the role that, how dare you fill? The government does that, and that's it. And that's not American. But let's listen to the words out of his mouth to give you his state of mind and what he thought. Any day now.
In Manhattan, so I take the subway multiple times a day. In this instance, I was coming from school. I got out of class around 2:15, and I took I was at J Street Metro Tech, took the Uptown F train. At 2nd Avenue, a man came on, stumbled on. He appeared to be on drugs. The doors closed, and he ripped his jacket off and threw it at the people sitting down to my left. I was listening to music at the time. And he was yelling, so I took my headphones out to hear what he was yelling. And the three main threats that he repeated over and over was, I'm gonna kill you, I'm prepared to go to jail for life, and I'm willing to die. You know, this was a scary situation. And Mr. Nearly came on, he was threatening. I'm 6'2", and he was taller than me. So and there's a common misconception that Marines don't get scared. We're actually taught one of our core values is courage. And courage is not the absence of fear, but how you handle fear. And, you know, I was scared for myself, but I looked around, I saw women and children. He was yelling in their faces, saying these threats. I couldn't just sit still.
So first he said something that's really important. That's what courage is. It's not the absence of fear. If you don't have fear, you're insane. It is when you have fear and you still do something even when you're afraid. All right. So basically he's trying to lay out what it was here, Robert. And you're the lawyer, you tell me. But in Florida and North Carolina, states I've been recently in and I'm a resident of, these stand your ground laws are not based on oh, he's got a gun in your face and he's about to pull the trigger right now. It's your perception that your life is in danger. So it does, George Zimmerman was a great case back in the day to explain this. Was George Zimmerman about to die, right? Was he going for his gun? And it's all these technicalities. And the bottom line was none of that mattered. Was George Zimmerman is it reasonable to believe that George Zimmerman was in a state of mind where he feared for his life? And if so, then he was allowed to defend himself with any means necessary. So this is the scene on the subway here. All right, let's just play this before I ask you for your comment on this. This is someone running their cell phone, and you're not going to be able to see too much of what's going on, but it gives you an idea. Everyone's sheltering in place, folks. All right, watch. Ryan.
Where's the NYPD? Oh my God.
Where's the NYPD?
Close the door. Close the door. Oh my god, oh my god.
Does it sound like these people are fearing for their lives, even though Jordan Neely is not really right up on them right now? Does it sound like they are terrified and in fear of their lives? I mean, come on, Robert. It's going to get any closer.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and there's no from day one, it was clear that this was a classic self-defense case that would not be prosecuted in most jurisdictions in the world.
Yeah.
And because he was white and Neely was black, everybody knew that if the racial roles were reversed, wouldn't have brought the prosecution, because in other cases he's dropped high-profile cases like this where the person arrested was either Latino or African American. So it was just politics to the nth degree. Yeah, but credit to the fact that they could find a jury in Manhattan willing to give an honest verdict, because that was the big X factor.
You think this comes down to how even like liberal wasps are afraid to get in the elevator with the black man, right? Like, you think there's still like this, because the part of me sympathizes for this guy I'm going to play a clip of in a bit. Part of me sympathizes for some of these members of BLM because, well, first of all, the organization itself is a corrupt scam. But I understand why, especially black men at a certain age, subscribe to what they're saying, because of their personal experience. However, it's a shame because that's not what happened here. Like, what he goes on, it's like, I just played the clip. Like, it's not, this guy's like minimizing what the situation was. And I do have some stuff. I don't know if YouTube will like, nail us if I play it, but I do have some footage of when he's on the ground. And there was another element to this case, which is that when police arrived on the scene and he let him go, when he let Neely go, he had a pulse. There appeared to have been like a little bit potentially, like, if anything, a problem with how NYPD handled this. Not like I'm blaming them. I'm just saying it was not just the chokehold. They said he had a pulse.
The chokehold didn't kill him, according to what
That's
came out.
right. That's right. And let me just play that moment that really was like so key, because here is where, and I guess I should say there's some graphic stuff. He's laying on the ground. It's not like graphic, but here is the NYPD trying to get a hold of the situation.
What? You got a pulse?
You guys get out.
You got a pulse or no? I feel a pulse. You feel a pulse? You breathing, right?
I feel a pulse.
On the wrist.
He's
On the wrist.
Feel a pulse.
You got a pulse.
Yeah, he's got a pulse. I feel the pulse. Yep, he's got a pulse. Is he breathing? Yeah, he's breathing. So, like, how could he even Robert, the charges themselves are just ridiculous. And can you explain to people, like, why Mike Cernovich and others were telling people last week, this is not a win? All right, this deadlock is not a win. This judge, what he's doing, and the prosecutor, this is like unheard of. You don't like, they were trying to get a compromised verdict. Maybe you could explain that better than I can, of course.
Oh, sure. Because you can charge whatever facts probable cause supports, but there's a proclivity to what's called overcharging, where prosecutors charge what they can charge rather than what they are actually intending to get secure conviction on, or what they think the person's actually guilty of. And here they charged a count that carried a decade plus in New York State prison with a count that is a 4-year max. And their goal was to have the second option as a carve out in case they couldn't come to a verdict on the first one. But the way that's supposed to work is they have to come to a verdict on the first one before they can talk about the so-called lesser included count. And here, the judge allowed them to not come to a conclusion on the top count and still give a verdict on the lesser included count, probably assuming that they were going to come back with a conviction on the lower count, not realizing that whatever their hang-up was on the top count was kind of technical, because they very quickly issued an acquittal on the lesser included.
Yeah, here's Turley on Fox News. Like, a lot of these, I'm like shocked. I feel like this is what I want to kind of like keep as a theme today. I kind of feel like, man, I wonder if you do too. I kind of feel like things like we're turning a page here. Like, Last week, we had Mitt Romney's farewell to the U.S. Senate, and it marked like the end of the Rockefeller Republican. Not only was the speech like, oh, he's out and like another Rockefeller down, but in the content of his speech actually illustrated why Rockefeller Republicanism or traditional Republicanism failed. And it's like, this case is marking or could mark, like basically an end to the BLM movement. Like, so here you even have WASPs and non-whites in Manhattan acquitting this man. It's like, I feel like sanity is starting to return already a little bit. Meanwhile, you have the ruling class trying to convince Trump to, when he gets in office, get involved in Syria and do this. And I mean, they're not like catching on here that the country does feel, or appears to be, just ready to just forget about this last 4 years. Like, this didn't happen, the pandemic, all that crap. We just want to forget that any of this happened. We were due never again kind of thing. And we're just going back. And here's Turley. I was going to play Leo Terrell, but here's Turley on Fox News, because it's like, yeah, we get used to Turley saying or criticizing people like Alvin Bragg, but I think he made a really good point here. And the fact he's even on Fox saying it is something that in and of itself is something.
So I think that the most surprised person in that room may be Alvin Bragg, because you have a jury that apparently couldn't agree on the more serious offense, but then they came back and they said, but we do agree that he's not guilty of the lesser offense. So it's not exactly how this was supposed to play out in his view. And you keep in mind that this is a jury that received an Allen charge. And so that's where the court says, go back and try again. It's a favorite charge of prosecutors, because jurors often do then produce a compromise verdict, a conviction for the prosecutor.
Yeah,
we don't need to hear the rest of what she has to say. I think what he said right there was it in a nutshell. Like, they bent over backwards. Like, they bent over backwards to charge Trump and try to get Trump and convict Trump. They bend over backwards to put this Marine Corps veteran in jail, who is not only defending himself, but others. They twist the law any way they want to do it. And they couldn't even get this conviction in Manhattan. Like, to me, it feels like something's different here, man. Like, I don't know.
Well, we saw that in the results. Now, what do you make of, why is it that like parts of New York City, parts of New Jersey, parts of Illinois swung so heavily? But so like one of my predictions was, I thought a lot of these sort of growth suburbs would not have the same magical turnout as they did in 2020, and thus wouldn't have the same big margins they did in 2020. That was true in almost every part of the country, except to some degree Georgia. Like, it's interesting, and to some degree North Carolina. It's like, but you look at the comparable areas, like normally Duval County votes a little bit to the left of Georgia very consistently. And while the Duval County shifted back dramatically toward Trump, Georgia shifted to Trump, but not by the same margins that Arizona or Illinois or California. Or, I mean, these other, and like, why is California swinging so heavily towards Trump? But not Washington, not Oregon. I mean, I was up in Seattle, but that's what I was trying to figure, like the future coalition and everything that's in flux and what's present. To your point, there is no, Romney Republican, Rockefeller Republican vote out there anymore. Whatever was out there is gone, outside of some donors and lobbyists. And so it's either the Trump coalition, or if they can put together an anti-Trump coalition, that's all Democrats have succeeded in doing so far. They haven't come up with an alternative coalition. They did with Obama, but he lost it within 2 years. He was never able to get it back.
Unlike really Trump. Real. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But like, you look at Obama, by 2010, he's lost the working class portion of that vote, and he would never get it back. Whereas you look at Trump, he has just continued to grow in the working class segments. And what's fascinating is you see movement from like 2012 to now. I was thinking as a baseline, in some Hispanic and Black areas, you have 40 to 50 to 60 point movements between the 2012 margin and the 2024 margin. And then you got some areas, some suburbs that moved slightly Democratic between 2020. I mean, like Roanoke became a little more Democratic. Northern Virginia became a little more Republican. So these were some of the anomalies. I was wondering what you thought of from, what's taking place in some of those places.
I think, honestly, Robert, this is why I was so vocal instead of just telling people like what public opinion said. This is why I was so vocal against like the Grodowski, DeSantis, Coulter theory of the case, because Republicans cannot win elections on white voters alone, and let alone at all anymore. The white votes are getting more professional class. I'm not even going to use the word educated. If I slip up and do it, I'll try to correct myself, but they're getting more credentialed. And the more credentialed they get in some of these areas, the more democratic these areas are going to be. Now, you could see like Roanoke, right? It's a great example. And you can see other places in Orange County in California where Republicans just did not do well. And there were pockets, though. It depends regionally. I think attitudinally has a lot to do with it. But you could look at Bucks County, where lower one in Buckingham is certainly more professional class. It actually swung to Trump a little bit, and then lower two, which is more working class, swung much heavier to Trump. But there were places where you had some of these white educated voters go back to Trump anyway. But overall, I think that the fact that we saw these anomalies you're talking about, I think that shows you that in a good or neutral environment, they're probably going to remain Democratic, or continue to go Democratic. John Duarte, C813, what a perfect example. I remember it was yesterday. They fly me out there. I'm talking to these Orange County people. We have the Lincoln dinner, and I get up there and give this speech they definitely don't want to hear, which is that you're all going to lose these seats, and Donald Trump's going to win the Central Valley when he runs again for president in 2024. And you're looking to now, and you're not realizing the demographic shifts are not going to, this party cannot be a white party. There's not enough white voters. You can't hold on in San Diego. You can't hold on in Orange County. You can't count on these places anymore. You already gave them up, like years and years of ignoring the fact that higher learning is nothing but like an indoctrination camp. Years of it is now taking its toll. But there are still, and I think we're seeing it with this verdict, there are still like some waspy areas that did shift to Trump. And it's like you have that in combination. Like I'm showing New York right now for a reason, because let's take just Kings County. You have and Queens is just unbelievable. But Trump got in the teens in Kings County, low teens, folks, 12%. Most Republicans get like 12%. Look at him, 28%. And that's a combination of the non-whites that shifted to him, and then some of the waspy old kind of silk stocking Republican deciding, you know what, this isn't working out. Maybe either whether it was economics or deep down, they really do think like being trans does not make you a civil rights hero. It makes you a friggin' nutcase, right? And then but the areas that move the most, parts of Queens, look, he's at 38%, parts of Queens that are Asian, Hispanic, right? Not those like remaining white neighborhoods in Staten Island, right? We already know those are moving. Those were moving to Trump. It wasn't really that big of a surprise. There are more working class areas in parts of Staten Island anyway, even though it can be expensive to live there now. It's just like, that is just a different world. So I think we see some of that coupled. My point is, though, you cannot count on those people who did shift back to Trump a little bit. You cannot count on them to stay Republican. You've got to continue to win the rest of those votes. Duarte is a perfect example. How many years ago did we say this, Robert? You better nominate David Giglio, no matter what you think of the guy. He's MAGA. And he's the only one who walked around in those Hispanic counties. I mean, those Hispanic precincts that in the counties like Stanislaus, which is Duarte's home county, he lost it. Trump won it. He lost it. In Madera, this most Republican area, he grossly underperformed Donald Trump. And it's not just because of the white conservative. It's because of parts of Madera are now Hispanic. And he won this what is Devin Nunes? He refers to them as working class cowboys or Mexican cowboys, or I forgot what he calls them, but just try to, not at all derogatory, like trying to explain to people like that's the, there are parts of the Hispanic population over there that are like that. Now, unfortunately for Devin, he was fully convinced that somebody with a last name like Duarte was better to run because he has a somewhat Hispanic sounding last name and he's Portuguese. Look, a white, no offense to Trump and your age, bro, you look great, an old white billionaire from Queens, New York, curb stomped him with these voters in his own backyard. Merced, he's running like overall more than 5 points behind him in California 13. He won it easily after Biden carried it by 10 plus. He won it easily, and Duarte lost it to Adam Gray. And by the way, it's going to be very hard to beat Adam Gray. He's viewed as a moderate Democrat. A lot of Republicans even endorsed him. So he's going to be very, very difficult to beat. And if you just would have put David there, it would have not sent mixed signals, right? And the Hispanics there would have said, oh, all right, this party is moving toward Trump. It is more of a Trump party because they still have this like fracture. Look, Robert, this guy put Ukraine first. The FBI has something over him. So he was constantly against holding Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray accountable. Like, that's not going to fly with these people. It's just not. That's not what they care about. They don't want to send money to Ukraine. They're more worried about paying their own damn bills. Why are you printing money at the Fed when we can't pay for our groceries or our rent, right? And they just ignored these people. And they're all over, man. They're all over the 5 boroughs. They're all over New Jersey and Bergen County and Morris County, which is whiter and more educated. And Trump still did incredibly well there. Watch this. Especially northern Monmouth. What an incredible, unbelievable. This Monmouth County. Folks who don't know, Route 9 runs up through here. As you get like beyond Howell Township and Freehold Township, you get into like Marlboro, right? And that's rich, certainly bougier. And Trump crushed it there, actually. He crushed it. But I just don't think you can count on them to remain Republican. So instead, you better look at places like Cumberland and Salem and Gloucestershire, where there are pockets of Hispanics that look, he flipped Gloucestershire. You and I have been talking about this since even like 2018 going into the 2020 election. Nobody paid attention. He did incredibly well against Hillary Clinton in these areas where Obama was winning them like 65-35. And it was like, why? Because these are working class Hispanics butted up against other non-white working class groups, and they don't vote like monolithic urban blacks right? They don't vote like that. They vote with their pocket and they vote with their attitude. So he appeals to them with the attitude that turns off the WASP in Roanoke, or not even WASP. I don't even know what to call them, but the credentialed professional class white, that attitude that turns them off. They love that shit. They love it. They think he's real. And he made it cool. And this is why I'm a little bit, and any Republican strategists out there better get this through their thick head. He made it cool to be a Republican. Like kids, all my kids, they were sharing like memes with Benny Johnson and the Trump dance. Like that's never happened. Never, Robert. Gamers. They're all sending Larry Schweikert's son. He's a gamer too. Like they're all sending around all of these things that eat the dogs, eat the cats. My daughter's got all these Trump dance memes going on. Like it was cool to be a Trump supporter. It's not cool to be a Duarte supporter. It's not cool to be, even like Ted Cruz. He did great. Don't get me wrong. But holy crap, Robert, look at South Texas. I posted about this the other day. Look at Hidalgo, 51-48. Look at Starr, 58-42. Folks, Hillary Clinton won this county 65-35, basically, really 66-33 in 2016. Look at this swing. I mean, I don't, Zapata, 61-39. And when he barely carried Zapata in 2020, you and I were like, red light, hello, big deal. I mean, you have, counties named after Mexican revolutionaries going for Trump in big numbers. Hello. I mean, I don't know how people don't see it, Robert. They don't want to see it. They don't really like these people. Let's be real.
What do you think about the Trump made major inroads with various minority working class groups, in part because there was more growth there to be had.
Yeah.
But what do you make of like divergence with like Yankee voting pattern? Like Massachusetts, Trump did quite well, but makes very little inroads into Maine. And it's unusual to see some of these areas that tend to vote alike not really vote in the same pattern. Any thoughts on that?
I think what's part of this is I think an artifact of our system. You have him make a late play in New Hampshire, which you were right, by the way. Man, that got close. Remember, I was the skeptic and I'm like, too many white liberals, Fact of the matter is he crushed it outside of Manchester. Even look as you go, south of Manchester is one thing, it's very wealthy there. But as you go east, even toward Massachusetts, right? Toward the Massachusetts burbs, which is really what they are. Let's get real. They're an extension of Massachusetts now. He did well. He did really well.
That was the part that's what was fascinating to me was you get New Hampshire makes a 5-point movement towards Trump.
Media market
Massachusetts makes
overlap.
a 5-point or bigger movement towards Trump.
Yeah.
But I think Vermont was what, 3 points or something like it was less, particularly in
Yeah.
southern, like the Portland, Maine area, didn't seem to
Yeah.
budge much.
I think that's media overlap. This is why I really can't stand when Republicans fall for the media poll bull. I can't stand it because it's like, God, Seltzer's got Harris up by 3. Better go back to Wisconsin. Better shore up Pennsylvania. And I'm not saying they're not close states, but he went to Virginia because it was an overlapping market with North Carolina and because they believe some of the hype that North Carolina was tight. It wasn't tight. I mean, 4 points, 3.5 point, 3 points to 4 points in North Carolina is not really tight. And I suspect with migration, state to state migration, COVID fleers, and then also just Republican refugees from blue states are pouring in to the eastern part of the state. I think that, as long as they stay Trumplican, that state's going to get redder on the presidential level. It reminds me of Florida early on, but when he goes to New Hampshire, he overlaps from Massachusetts, right? When he makes an ad buy in New Hampshire, there's overlapping media markets there. Maine is kind of like out there. And this is why I'm like, ignore the polls, the media polls that are total bull. The worst poll was not Ann Seltzer, folks, this cycle, although it was really bad. The worst poll was Dartmouth College, which had Harris up almost 30 points in the state of New Hampshire. Folks, I kid you not. It was awful. In fact, we should probably blow these people up and show this. And I'm waiting for this pollster scorecard here, brother, which I have a little bit of insight in, and I'm kind of waiting on it. But in any event, I mean, they believe it. They see those polls, and while they like publicly say, "Oh, that's BS," in truth, it. They're like, "Oh man, we better go back to New Hampshire. Oh man, we better go back to North Carolina." Instead of just taking a second to go to the areas where Collins does better than you around Portland, around those. And if I click on it, people will see what I mean. There are like townships in New Hampshire. It's the same. They don't really report by county. A lot of news outlets will show you the county, but we do it like this because this is the way that results are actually counted in these states. It's different in some of these New England states. And Collins does better in this area, right? You can see Portland right here. You can see Augusta. He actually did pretty well around there, but it's really the south and western areas around Portland that he doesn't do that well in. Brunswick, I mean, how much gains you're going to make there. But if you look at Collins's map, she's red all the way up to Bridgeton and Sweden and Waterford. They're all, she just does much better there. Go there. If you do moderately better in the first district, moderately, and you're going to slap in the second, then you have a chance. Like, it's almost like sole focus should be on those areas in the first district where he doesn't do as well as Collins, and they're just ignored because the media polls that make it out like this was somehow a neck and neck race. It was not neck and neck. And why did they believe it? Again, Robert, they believed it. I had people calling me for data because they were afraid of Ohio. I'm concerned about Ohio. I'm like, nah, you know what? Go find someone else. I'm actually not going to make money off of your stupidity and waste my time pulling a friggin' list off of Ohio because you're a moron. I'm not doing it. Sorry. I'm focused on other things right now. But this is the way it is, just so people understand. Like, these are the calls I get. It's unbelievable.
Well, and it was interesting to me that there's a certain historical ancestral overlap and other overlap with Portland, Maine, Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. And they're all three of the major metros that almost didn't budge at all from 2020. The all have used mass mail-in voting, but so does parts of California and Florida and some other places too. That saw, I mean, everywhere else saw Trump movement. I mean, Houston 7-8 points towards Trump, Dallas 7-8 points towards Trump. But not, and then the two areas that were it was that Pacific Northwest, Old Northeast, old Yankee territory. People forget Seattle and Portland, Oregon were old Yankee areas back in the day. And then otherwise, the only areas where Trump didn't make much inroads was like parts of North Carolina, like the Research Triangle and
The Research Triangle.
in
Yeah.
Atlanta.
Yeah. The research. Because here, actually, that's a good point. Let me pull up North Carolina. I did already, but let me pull it up and put it on the screen with us, because this is going to be this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about moving forward. How, I mean, because he's changed the map totally here. It's just the beginning. It really is just the beginning, or it could be if they're not stupid. And right now, the only person I see who could do this moving forward is JD Vance. Like, I see nobody else. Don't talk to me about Ron DeSantis, who's been groomed and pedigreed for a job at the Secretary of Defense so he could scoop Pete Hegseth. You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to happen. I'm just saying, or at least it doesn't look like it anymore. But don't give me that crap. Like, that is not, you're not seeing it if you're going down that road. You think DeSantis is, prime, and you think some of these other people are prime. That's you. That's not the black man who's 35 years old in an urban area. Or let's look at, for instance, a town like Craven, right? Close to my own backyard. Trump wins Craven County 14, 16 points usually. Let's call it 15. All right. That's usual for a Republican. He crushed it here, over 20 points this time. All right. Did even better than Murphy in that part of the district. Why? Craven County is almost 30% African-American. There's a lot of whites, a lot of Marines, right? You have Cherry Point, right? The base. There's a lot of that, but it's more African-American than its southern neighbor, which is Carteret County. And Carteret, don't get me wrong, it voted even more for Trump. This is one of those others that we were talking about, like this more like a Buckingham lower one, but it's obviously it's different. But there's a boating town. It's white, it's affluent, it's wealthy, and it's typically Republican. It's just not this Republican. So you saw like this combined with what happened in Craven, which is definitely more non-white votes. And I know Laura and I stood outside the polling station on election day. We had never seen election day turnout like this, even though Republicans had already voted in huge numbers early on compared to their prior years, right? And we could go up to people and they were very vocal. It was a very vocal support for Trump that you would never see from black voters waiting on a line in areas like this. Like, they'll be quiet, they'll go in there, they'll vote for their Democrat, and they'll leave. That is not what this was. This was, I'm voting for Trump this year, and I'm freaking happy, man. I can't wait to get in there, dude. Trump, bro. Thanks, brother. Thanks. Like, welcome to the party. Like, it was insane. Never seen anything like it. You can't do that off the white vote in Craven County. There's not enough of them. There's just not enough. They elect local Democrats with that 23 to 30% African-American voting block, or at least voting eligible population. They don't always make up, their share. They don't always do that here, but a great example of that. And then you look at others like Beaufort, certainly like whiter, but it does have some non-whites. But you're right. When you get into, Forsyth, he did a little bit better there. But Mecklenburg, 33, awful. I mean, it's a Republicans. Wake County, you cannot fall below 36% in Wake County. He actually got a little bit less than what he's done in the past there. But again, a lot of those people, there's like one spot in Wake County where it's still Republican. It's not the entire county, obviously, but it's like they view themselves as a very separate group. Like, they wish they were their own county over there. It's getting less and less because they're moving east or they're moving south. And then, of course, you have Cumberland. He put up a decent showing, but nothing really, like you said, like nothing. This was more like a suburban and rural African-American vote in North Carolina, which was a little bit different than what we had seen in some of the other states around the country where it was an urban vote. I mean, that was in Jacksonville.
Well,
there are a lot of black votes.
Well, we mentioned before about the drop off at voter registration in the rural black belt showed up on election day. I mean, their turnout was down 15, 20% throughout the rural black belt in the South, which was enough to just by itself to tip North Carolina and Georgia if they had been closer.
Yeah. I think too, like some of the Piedmont regions. Also, if you look at South Carolina and you look at the Piedmont counties, just for people who don't remember Pickens and all these other we talked about during the primary, where there's actually the highest percentage of black voters in the southern states areas like that. And of course, Columbia, right, which is Richland. Charleston, there's of course, look at how well he did in Charleston. That's so from like the Piedmont black belts and the urban black belt counties, even though we really can't call them that, they did better in states. He did better in states like that. And that is all I'm telling you. What's his name? Patrick Ruffini did a great precinct breakdown of South Carolina, which I had shared, because you could actually see it in the primary vote. Biden was doing his best vote shares in those black belt counties, but the turnout was down. And Trump was doing just a little bit better than in like traditional white Republican areas. And everybody was like, oh, that's a little weird. It wasn't weird. There was like 2-3% of the entire primary electorate that was a new black vote for Trump. And it was everywhere. And in Arizona, Robert, you could see it in like the Navajo areas in Arizona. You could see that there was a Native American vote there, and Biden was actually doing worse. He was getting like 82% in the Navajo areas. And then in parts of Arizona and Maricopa, it's like you can vote anywhere in Maricopa, but you're still going to vote relatively close to your house or your job, right? And you could see it in the most Hispanic areas where Trump was actually doing better against Nikki Haley than he was in like Scottsdale with the typical Republican, older Republican, white Republican. He was doing better in the non-white areas. So it really shouldn't have surprised anybody that this is the coalition he put together, because it was actually in the primary vote. It's just that people don't vote in primaries the way that they vote in generals. So you really have to look at it. It's a lot more nuanced. And you have to look and say, why is he doing better in this area of Apache than he is in like some precinct of white Republicans in southeastern Maricopa? Because there's a white vote that is just going to get more, I think, going to get more Democratic. The only thing, and I will say this, the one thing that can save them, Republicans, from that, and this is not to sound horrible, it's just life. The Republican that's getting more Democratic is a little bit older, and they're going to die. All right. I mean, so they're going to die, and they're not going to be around forever. And if you look at like how Trump performed better with younger voters, it's much more promising than it appears, because it's like they missed, man. You and I talked, it was like before the primary process, and you did this breakdown on generations, the way that I break it down by just age ranges. And you did these descriptions that we did a show on, really in detail, describing what, I don't want to say creates, but what, each generation identifies with, the events in our time, that made my generation with 9/11, right? And you went through all of this. It was really, really cool. You could see that you were right, and that Democrats missed this younger. Something happened. Like they had a stranglehold on the youth vote of the past, and then something happened with the newer, younger vote where they just missed them, or they think they're nuts or something. I don't know, but like they missed reaching an entire group of that younger voter that we were talking about, that you were bringing up. And then that combined with losing the millennials like me and Vance, like that combined was just devastating. It was just devastating. And it's almost like, not to sound cruel, but it's like, hey, you can have them. You can have the 65 pluses who are, they don't want to rock the boat, Robert. They want to collect their Social Security check. They still think government's good. They don't want to believe 9/11 was a bullshit hoax. I mean, not 9/11, Iraq and weapons of mass destruction were a bullshit hoax. They don't want to believe that government's like bad, And meanwhile, these younger people are like, I hate authority. Yeah, absolutely, they'll do that. Absolutely, they'll lie. Absolutely, COVID was probably huge, when you think about it in their psyche. We robbed them of their senior prom. We robbed them of, their scholarship for football. We stole that from them, and they were pissed. They were pissed. It was great, man. We should replay some of those clips one day, because that was, I mean, your thesis, man, was just spot on. Turned out to be 100% correct.
To what extent, when figuring out like what took place in 2024 versus 2020, part of it is you have the argument about the excess votes that some of us believed occurred in 2020,
Yeah.
And it appears there's overlap with those same specific areas where all of a sudden that dropped off, even in places like Nebraska too. Where you had a lot of young growth areas, where you have a lot of apartment complexes, where you have a lot of retirement, assisted living facilities, that kind of thing. That's where you saw a lot of unusual vote turnout, and then all of a sudden we don't see that vote turnout this time around. Is
Yeah.
that the best evidence that 2020, probably 4 or 5 million of those votes were phantom votes?
Yeah, I don't think there's any other explanation. People are going to argue, oh, it was just an unusually high turnout because of COVID. And that's nonsense. We polled in great detail in states like Pennsylvania and Michigan, great detail with vote history, constantly doing data appends to make sure that that vote history that they were claiming could be verified. Right. And I'm telling you, Robert, about if you look at the vote, that's really the missing vote for right now. And these are people who don't have vote history, but they voted in 2020, right? And they're logged as like in the voter file. You can see they're absentee ballot only 2020 voters. When we did our polling, we really could only account for like a third of them. And in some states, it was a little less. Some states, it was a little bit more. Nationally, it was roughly 32%, 33% on any given day. So it was very consistent. And it's like one voter who I talked about before on the show, I'll bring him up again, was a voter in Philadelphia. He was a black guy in his 30s. And basically, he voted only in 2020 by absentee ballot. And then he had been knocked at the very last minute by Harris. And they were like, hey, you didn't vote. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to vote. You guys lied to me. You said that Trump was to blame for the pandemic, that Joe Biden wasn't senile, this all. And the country went to shit. So I'm not voting for you. But he didn't vote for Trump. He just didn't vote, right? That guy is like we can say he's part of that 1/3 that we could identify who we spoke with and just basically said, yeah, I'm gonna vote. Like 2/3 of that vote was like it's not real. Like it's just I don't. Can it 100% be proven? No, not unless we call everybody in that 2/3. But I'm telling you, the people we did were all like, hey, we don't, I don't have, this isn't him or this isn't her. So-and-so doesn't live here anymore. Like it's a lot. These were the votes that we knew were like low-hanging fruit, change of address flags. And what happened this time was a lot of proactive behavior by Republicans, where you had that Arizona-based consulting firm get busted. You had another one who was in Bucks County running around knocking on doors just to make sure that voters of record did not live in those addresses anymore. They weren't asking the resident to vote, people. They were knocking on their door and saying, hey, I'm just making sure Mike doesn't live here anymore. Why? Why are they doing that? Because they're going to fill Mike's ballot in. And that stuff was caught. A lot of it was caught ahead of time. And when you can catch something ahead of time, you can do something about it. But as you know, Robert, as a lawyer, it's too late once those ballots have been processed and they're through. There's nothing to do. There's no remedy to fix that. Republicans were like all over it this time. Did some stuff, I'm sure, get through? Of course. I mean, you're never going to stop everything. But I really do think like 2/3 of that vote, Robert, is just BS. I'm willing to say the disparity between 2020 and 2024, about a third is just people who were like, no, you fooled me once. I don't like her. I don't like Biden. I'm not keen on Trump, but I'm not going to go out and vote. And even some of them were, by the way, now. They were. They're just very low vote history and very difficult to get to vote. And they just didn't. The other 2/3, utter bullshit. I don't know what to tell you, folks. Utter bullshit. That's behind. Go look at the Justice Department. Look at the indictments in Philadelphia. Look at the indictments from Atlantic City. That's who those votes are. They're not real. And we act like this doesn't happen. Like, get at it. I'm so tired of it. And it's like a very naive way of looking at the world. Of course, people do it. And if you remember, Robert, the Trump hatred, I think this is an important point. You and I talked a lot in 2020 about, like, look at a person like Reality Winner, who is willing to throw her whole life away and potentially go to jail just to hurt Donald Trump, ruin her job, ruin her career. You think if Reality Winner got these to her address, she wouldn't go, ooh, I'm going to fill these in. And that hatred and that like fear, even some of it was fear. Oh, he's Hitler. They believed it in 2020. And they did that. They like outsourced the fraud by doing that and making people fear and hate him, but that fear and that hate had been reduced dramatically by the time we got to the 2024 election. He was more popular than he had ever been. There were much fewer people willing to do something stupid for senile Joe Biden and his get on your knees to climb the ladder successor. Get out of here. They're not going to do it, man. They're just not. And that, look at him now, by the way. Look at how popular he is now. And we're doing the Christmas poll, by the way, which we really kind of dipped into this weekend. I'll get into that more, but I knew we weren't gonna have enough time to like do it for this show, and I want to do it on a Monday with what are the odds. But I'm telling you, this guy's popular. Robert, like 56% at this point are like, yeah, I'm glad he won. That's huge.
Right.
Huge. Never believed that would happen. I really could not believe that would ever happen in the Trump era. The hatred's gone. You know, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we've been seeing that for a
often.
while. I mean, it was just that so much of the hatred was caricature driven.
Yeah.
And so that the more the caricature version didn't occur, or the consequences that were predicted didn't come about, like, you know, World War III or this or that, or tyranny or dictatorship or censorship or lawfare, only happened when Trump was out of office. And so that fact by itself would put Trump in a position and put his voters in a position to filter this out in ways that it was going to be much harder than they thought to simply drive the Trump support into silence. Now, the other thing it came up with this election is that, you know, now we have some serious split voting. Split ticket voting is back for the first time in a long time. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it appears to be disproportionately the new working class voter, Trump voter, that is the ticket splitter. That is then voting Democrat in the House, Democrat in the Senate, Democrat for statewide offices. In terms of that, given that's back and now a factor, I mean, even in fact, Casey tried to profit from it. You could argue that Baldwin did profit from it because they ran as being Trump supporting tough on trade, and that might have been just enough for Baldwin to sneak in, you know, as part of that old fine gold left populace that she was originally part of when she got elected, but she has long since, no longer been concerned about. I mean, it's clear there's a populist majority, which Trump has tapped. The question is which party taps it on an ongoing basis, because beneath Trump, there is not a consistent populist message by either party's brand or leading members.
Great example of this is Michigan, and another one for Duarte, by the way, perfectly. These are the split ticket voters. Look at Detroit, Wayne County. Trump got in the mid 30s, which we polled him at 36% in our poll in Michigan, which I was like, oh my God, like that does not happen, folks, in a presidential year. But look at Mike Rogers, low 30s. You know, we can go all over the map in Wisconsin. You'll see the same thing in lumberjack country. And in fact, I'll show you that in a second. But even look at Monroe. Rogers did good there, but it's a more typical Republican county. And then Macomb, he's only at 53, right? Look at Trump, 56. And like, so you're going all over around the map and you're seeing this like 3 to like 8 point disparity between him and the Republican candidate. And that's why these guys.
Captain Oakland. Or in
Oakland,
that's a good point.
So Donald Trump got 44% in Oakland, which was only Harris plus 10, which is incredible compared to prior cycles. And even Rogers got 1.5 points less in Oakland County than Trump. So they even underperformed him in more affluent areas, even though Oakland's not all. You got Holly.
Didn't that happen almost everywhere? That in the past, the upscale areas, the Republicans have overrun. Outperformed Trump, and that didn't happen this time.
Look, even in Grand Rapids, which you could argue is the most never Trump part of Michigan.
Protestant that deeply skeptical of Trump's personality.
Super skeptical of the attitude that is Trump, like the crassness. They don't like that at all. But still, Mike Rogers gets 46.3%. That's it, compared to Trump, who gets 46.5%. And then check this out. When you go west of Grand Rapids and you get to like Ottawa and you get to Muskegon, Trump gets 50.2 in Muskegon. He gets 60% in Ottawa. And when you look at Rogers, he's only tied in Muskegon. He's less than just under Trump a hair in Ottawa, which is very Republican.
A little behind in the upscale areas and way behind in the blue collar areas.
Yep. And I mean, so like his brand is stronger, period. End of story. But like you can really see it in the more blue collar areas, whether or not it's white or black or Hispanic. That's the kicker. Look at Sam Brown, and I'm going to Wisconsin just to show you real quick with Hovda, but Sam Brown's another example. Hovda did decent in lumberjack country. He lagged a little bit in Bayfield. Really, when you look at around places like Brown, that's where you're really going to see like a pretty couple of points here, couple of points there. Kenosha, Trump was at like 52.5, and Hovda was at 50.5. Just a little bit shy, just a hair. But lumberjack country for Trump was just incredible. Look at this. 47% in Ashland, 47% in Douglas. Yo. That's higher than any of us projected he was going to get in those counties. When Trump won Wisconsin last time, he was like, guess what? I can get 43. I can get 44. And that was already great for a Republican because Mitt Romney was getting 32. In lumberjack country. And then Trump came around here and barely loses these counties. It's incredible. He did wind up losing Washoe barely. But if you go and look at the exit polls and compare Brown to Trump, you'll see here, I mean, he lost Washoe by 6. Trump barely lost it. It's essentially a 1-point loss. Brown didn't win Asians. Trump did. Brown didn't tie, his opponent with Hispanics. Trump did, right? And then, by the way, when even the white vote, it's just a hair better for Trump, just a hair better. So they are underperforming him there and among everybody, but the most pronounced areas are the ones that Republicans need most. And you can see that in Clark, guys. I mean, watch this in Clark County. Trump barely lost Clark County, lost it by 2 points, basically rounding, right? Look at Brown. Very typical margin, very typical loss in Clark County. Rosen, 1 Hispanics that also voted for Donald Trump. Period. Full stop. And of course, you can add, black voters in there too. He did well with voters of color in Nevada. Very well. He won Hispanics in Michigan, by the way. He won the Hispanic vote in Michigan. Rogers lost it.
Right. And I think the other aspect is going forward, these candidates need to find an issue that stands out, that they cannot keep running on just generic Republican Party branding for that midterm. They need to, like Lake, for example, had a lot of really good positions. To my knowledge, I don't know if any of those ever showed up in any advertising of any kind. Like she had a standout position on vaccine makers should be held liable if the vaccines cause children injury. That's a great it's a standout position. It's a position Gallego can't take because he's in Big Pharma's pocket. But to my knowledge, I saw very little promotion of it, very little advertising of it. And that was true of all of the candidates. And that was for all the candidates, I saw no effort really to say, here's how I'm different than the generic Republican brand and like whatever it is that attracts you to Trump. Whether that's crypto issues, trade issues, war issues, health freedom issues, farmer freedom issues, whatever it is that these voters have at some connection to or concern with, or as a filter to say, here's how I'm different. I'm not a generic Republican. That on paper should have been easy for Carrie Lake, for example. But it's clear between the Republican primary spending against her that beat her up badly and that saddled her with risk. And then on top of that, just running, I mean, as far as I could tell, a generic campaign, unless I missed it. But it was, and I thought I had the most hope for her. But that was like, I know that was true here in Nevada. The mistake that Brown made, that some other people made, was, and when they're running in the primaries, they'll embrace some positions that are really just kind of extreme positions, like a complete ban on abortion forever.
Abortion.
And then, all right, it gets you a little bit of an edge in the primary. It will hurt you in the general. That's why I always thought Trump was smart on how he handled that issue.
So smart.
in the same. So I think that's what they've got to do. Now, one interesting thing is for the first time, some abortion bill referendums didn't succeed, didn't get the ultimate result that even including in Florida, because of how they chose to reword the phraseology. And it's still in a lot of states got past people that they were basically promoting abortion until birth.
Yeah.
That's what these laws actually were doing, but they made it look like that it only limited abortion, or it didn't limit, or it didn't do anything to stop a state from banning abortion post viability. Point in fact, there's a carve out by their generic phraseology, but at least Florida, Nebraska, South Dakota spotted that. So at least we saw some improvement there as well. But we're seeing a very shifting electorate that has a huge portion out there of young working class minorities, millennials, and Zoomers disproportionately that are basically divorced from the Democratic Party, but they are not engaged to the Republican brand.
Yeah.
And who the candidates and party that wins them over long term will be the next majority party for the next generation.
Yeah, Roosevelt like majority, folks, like the New Deal like majority. It will have staying power simply because of who is going to make up the largest share of the electorate. And the reason why, I mean, Trumpism is in such a good position, Robert, is because of the 45 to 64 age group where millennials are coming up behind. They're still red. So even as like 65 to 74 gets bluer, and 75 plus is still very red. Super seniors like Spencer Kimball at Emerson College, man, after he dropped the Iowa poll and then Seltzer dropped ours, the first thing immediately, and I saw it, he saw it, we both, everyone who knows anyway, who knows what they're doing, saw it. Mark Mitchell saw it. Her 65 to 74 at best was way overrepresented, and she missed with seniors, the 75 plus. There was a very weird dynamic going on. But if you can capture, if Republicans can hold on to that new, younger working class, especially non-white, that went for Trump, and they can couple that with the 45 to 64, that is the reddest of them all between that, and they make like 50 to 100 grand a year. That's like the reddest, most Trumpy person out there. Then it will be a New Deal-like coalition. If you look at, I brought up Arizona as another great example, and I think it's money. I just flat out, I know a lot of people are like fraud. Money. She just, as Robert just said, she got beat over the head by Karen Taylor Robeson with so much money during the primary that it hurt her with a certain group of Republicans forever, period. I mean, it's very clear. And then this other group doesn't know what to make of Republicans that can't, and I know Kerry's very well known, but not with this group of people. This is what you guys don't understand. Trump has universal name ID. They know who he is. They didn't really know her the way that they knew Trump. And these people are Republican skeptics because they're constantly screwing him. They're constantly stabbing him in the back, stabbing the voters in the back. Ukraine, spend money on Ukraine instead of worrying about the problems that they have. Right. And then the abortion thing is just like indicative of some of these cultural issues where Trump is a master and they cannot thread this needle. They think I got to win Iowa in a caucus. Let me go hard right when Robert and I are trying to tell them that even Iowa evangelicals aren't that right anymore. Like that is not what constitutes a cultural evangelical anymore. And Trump, you could see it in the polling, was like right perfectly in the ideological spectrum for these people, and not just them, but a majority. And when you ask people all over the country who was too liberal, who was too conservative, she was always way too liberal. Then there were more people who thought that she was too liberal than thought Trump was too right wing or too conservative. He was actually majority considered to be moderate. And so he changed that entire, I don't even know if you want to call it dichotomy. It's more like, do you just change the alignment of the spectrum? And by him, she only won what? The abortion vote by 6 points? It's nothing. Republicans all over in 22.
I
And
assume
here,
that's another issue we can now put to rest. The whole, because it was Seltzer's theory.
Yeah.
This whole abortion changed everything. Everybody was motivated by abortion. Abortion is the reason why Democrats, they didn't get completely crushed in 2022. And abortion was why they were going to win in 2024. They were going to hold the House, or take back the House. They were going to potentially hold the Senate, hold the White House. None of that happened because that was myth from day one. that there was no big, huge Dobbs backlash like people pretended there was.
There was a gap in their ability to gather votes, Robert. There was a gap in their ability to get out the vote because of the way that this is not really only a game of persuasion anymore. This is a game of gathering. And they had a huge advantage on Republicans until Trump, I don't know who did it, made him see the light. I don't know who that could have been. And because it's very important to have the leader say, vote early, do this, get out the vote, too big to rig, swamp the vote, cast your early ballot, and then get 5-10 people to vote too. Was very important. Once that closed, then that abortion thing was just completely exposed as just total BS. Their problem, if they have one with abortion, is that they just didn't. Some of them did not take Trump's lead. There is, Cerno is right about this. What good is being a purist if you lose? Like, what good? Democrats are what they are, but they don't run in front of the camera and say it all the time, Robert. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Republicans are really stupid like this. Am I saying lie? No. Yes. Kind of. Yeah. I'm saying that it took, God, I came up in the 80s and 90s. By the time I was in health class in high school, they were being taught by, I'm sorry, I'm going to blow you up here, Miss Haggerty. Miss Haggerty, who was the health teacher, who also, by the way, was one of the gym coaches. She doubled as the health instructor, and she told everybody, that don't ruin your life with a pregnancy. If you do screw up, first of all, here's something called a condom. Wear one. If you do screw up, don't feel bad because it's only a blob of cells. It's not really a baby. It's not even a fetus. It's just a blob of cells in the beginning. So, and then culture beating everyone over the heads with this narrative for like 30 years, folks, 30, 40 years. All right. It's going to take time for that to unwind, and you have science on your side. The more Americans learn and the more the science catches up to this debate, the worse it gets for the pro-choice movement. There are not, when we have done this, Robert, you've seen the numbers. When we ask people, what are you? What's your designation? What do you consider yourself to be? Oh, by the way, we're going to ask you now a series of questions about whether you think abortion should be legal during these timeframes. You will not see the defections from pro-life people, pro-life designates that you see from pro-choice designates. So people just think they're supposed to be pro-choice. But once you actually get into the specifics, they're not. I mean, this is like, and just take your time. Do what Robert Cahaley tried telling a handful of state governments. They didn't listen. Do what I tried telling a handful of state governments. They didn't listen. Take what you know you can win and wait for culture to catch up. I'm not saying you're not defending babies here, but you can't just all of a sudden expect the country in a few years after Dobbs is overturned, after Roe v. Wade, is overturned. You can't just expect them to jump on board with your way of thinking. Go with what everyone agrees on. Once a baby feels pain at 20 to 25 weeks, shouldn't be killing babies. Definitely late-term abortion is low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit. Nobody is going to defend, no voters anyway, are going to defend, except for a very small group, late-term abortion. Let Democrats sound like nutcases opposing when you do that. And then move further. The Pain Protection Act. And then eventually you get to the heartbeat. But you don't jump on the heartbeat. I'm sorry. You can't do it. Even though a lot of people will tell us a plurality will say that they really don't like the idea of aborting babies when a baby has a heartbeat. One woman, by the way, in the Atlanta suburbs told us during a poll, when your heart stops, you are dead. Right? We all know that. And if they can't revive you, you're dead. This is what one voter told us in Georgia. So why don't we think when the heart begins to beat, you are alive? And I was like, wow. And this was a Biden voter, by the way, a Biden voter. And she said that. So again, Trump is so good on this with messaging, and they got to follow his lead. They just have to. But, I just want to tell this story real quick. All right. So back when Steve Cortez and I were friendly still, because I don't really give a shit. These excuses you didn't know about, those smears against me. Robert, everybody knew about that shit. You talked about it. I heard you address it on Viva with Dave. Everyone knew where those smears were coming from. They were coming from that pack that he was the communications director of. How on earth are you going to tell me you didn't know about that? You're the communications director. You think I fell off the friggin' truck, dude, yesterday or something?
How much do you think those DeSantis people cashed in? I mean, that was a
Oh,
complete
millions.
waste of
I know
campaign.
what he made. I know what he made.
Made tons of
They made
cash,
a
and then they turn around and pretend they never took the path they took.
And then they may want to call you and try to be your buddy again.
Yeah.
Hold
Yeah,
your
well, they
ears.
just have no sense of
Hold the
loyalty or
kids'
anything else.
ears. Folks,
Now,
if you
speaking
got
of-
kids in the room, hold their ears for a second. Here's my answer. Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Is it cold out there? I hope so. I'm not even going to throw your ass a coat up yours. I'm not unity. I'm not Donald Trump. I don't need your unity.
Yeah.
I don't need that
See,
shit.
Now, well, speaking of not needing it,
My kids saw that shit.
I think
Robert?
that there needs to be focused targeting on primarying the right people, because sometimes it's done in a haphazard or sloppy
Haphazard.
way.
Totally
Like,
right.
I wouldn't waste my time trying to challenge Collins in Maine. You're going to end up with a
No.
Democrat. I mean, you know,
No.
yeah,
Not a good
that's a
idea.
waste of time. By contrast, you know, now where Texas is at, Cornyn is absolutely subject to
Got to
challenge.
get rid of him. Goodbye.
And Ernst in Iowa, given where Iowa's now
Goodbye.
at, absolutely you can challenge her and take her out, and should, to get somebody that's legit in the Senate. I mean, I think they really thought they could just replay 2016 all over again. It's clear
Of
that
course.
McConnell and that whole crowd thought that.
Yeah.
And they're surprised at the pushback that they're getting. But this is not the same old Trump. This is going to be a very different Trump in his second term.
And by the way, I'm one of those people from that news story making calls, asking people about the Attorney General. I think she would do a much better job than Joni Ernst. I think she'll crush Joni Ernst. And I think the voters of Iowa would happily replace her in 2 seconds with Joni Ernst without a shred of risk that she would lose that seat to the Democrat. So why don't you go get that Trumper instead, primary Joni's ass, and get rid of her? Because I never liked her from day one. She hasn't been anti-swamp since the ad she ran against Bradley, whatever, with the pigs in the mud. You remember that was a cool ad. Don't get me wrong, but that never was
take on
true.
the
It
swamp.
was BS.
Just like Governor Kemp was. When Kemp was getting elected governor, he was gonna deport those illegals himself. Remember that?
Right, dude.
I mean, these people are such fakes and phonies and frauds, and they're so accustomed to lying and deceiving. And credit also to Trump to putting out the message that, you know, what's your take on Gates? Why did Gates step? It almost felt like that was preordained.
I feel like he was I know that there were people who really did want that nomination. Like, they wanted a recess and they wanted it, you know. But at the core, I really feel, and just from talking to some people, that he was like a sacrificial lamb, that they knew that they were going to do what they pulled in 2016-17, you know, blocking all of his nominations, and that Republicans had to have at least one where they could say, we stopped that one, right? Because his biggest enemy is not the Democratic Party. His biggest enemy is the Republican Senate, not even the House, the Republican Senate. We went over this last week, folks.
Former Speaker of the House.
Of course, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, how much more he's got left on that, but sure. That is his real enemy, and I hate to use that word, but it is true. They don't care, and Rush was right about this. They hate him because they never intend to fulfill any of these promises. They're not conservative. They're not going to govern ever the way that they campaign on. That's all a lie. Donald Trump comes around and he's a problem for them because he does intend to do it. And when someone like that is exposing you, you oppose them. And that Rush was 100% correct. You know, nobody believes these Hegseth allegations or any of these, that they don't care about them at all. Like, I don't want to blow up one certain used to be judiciary senator who can't keep his hands off his young interns. Like, he's a creepy, disgusting old man from a very familiar state we were just referencing. And anyway, like, you know, he doesn't give a shit about this stuff. He's not any better. Like, none of these people are any better. these are just shows. These are excuses for them to vote the way that the rent seekers want them to vote. Like Pete Egg said, there's a problem for the military-industrial complex. The rent seekers lean on them. You got Northrop Grumman ringing their phone. You got all these people, ringing their phone, and they need an excuse. So they have the deep state run some BS story through the Wall Street Journal, and surprise, there's your excuse for being deeply concerned about this appointment. It's a lie, folks, a lie. Also, I really do think that, again, would have been great for some of those people, but I just think that he was fodder, and looking at how he's standing for Pete. So it was like, give you Gates, and now Gates is going to go on and do other things. It's a shame too, because I've polled, full disclosure, I polled for Gates during, when they hit him with those scandals in the very beginning. And the people of the 1st District in Florida love him, including, who love him the most? Republican women, which was like amazing. They were the first ones to rush to his aid. You had these squishy men like, I don't know, dude. I could kind of see Gates giving some 18-year-old $800 for a BJ, dude. Like, I could see that little Venmo transfer. Come get it, daddy. Like I could see. And they were like, being that kind of like squishy Republican that you see in the South, but not the women. Women were like, they're only doing this because he fights, and that's it. They rallied behind him. So I think he's going to do something. Obviously, I think I have in mind what that is. I do not think you're going to see Laura Trump run for governor in Florida. If anything, she needs to primary Tom Tillis, which she will win, and
Apparently
she will win overwhelmingly.
She is stepping down from the RNC, which has speculation that he's going to be the Senate replacement from Florida.
I also think Michael proved himself. So a lot of people thought maybe Whatley needs a loyalist watching over his shoulders to make sure everything's all right. And of course, keep an eye on him but I absolutely suggested Michael Whatley when asked like who should be the new head of the RNC. I didn't even speak another name. I've seen him in action in North Carolina. He understood the direction elections were moving. Like, how do you win elections? It's not by spending a fortune on TV advertisement anymore. It's about big data and mobilization. He gets that. And fighting. He gets fighting. Like, Republicans in North Carolina understand that one day you may be out, and you need to, like, look at what they're doing now. They're basically stripping the governor of their power, of his power. And when Cooper tried to override, to veto it, they overrode him. They're going to, by the time Josh Stein gets to be governor, he's going to be a tiny prick. Like, that's it. Like, that he's going to have no power. It's amazing. That's how North Carolina Republicans roll. Even the squishy ones are badass. Like, some of them are real badass. So I think, like, Michael is in a good position now where she can go on and do other things. I don't think it's going to be run for governor of Florida. I think that at this point, that's Matt's job if he wants it. I don't think he would end up being in the Senate. I just don't think he'd like the Senate. Could you see Matt liking the Senate? Like, Matt, I personally don't think you'll like the Senate. Like, let me just say.
Well, I always remember Huey Long's quote. He goes, when the crowd comes, after years and decades of failure by this august body, the question for me will be, do I stay in here and hang with you, or do I go outside and help lead them in to hang you?
Yeah.
Needless to say, every senator basically hated Huey Long because he had no problem. And you could tell Gates would, I remember that there's like some scene of Gates around the convention where he's sitting there saying, nobody wants to hear from you. Nobody wants, and I don't even know who he's talking to, but it's like perfect. That's what we needed at that convention. People going around telling Mitch McConnell, telling Nikki Haley, telling Mike Pompeo, when nobody wants to hear from you. Gates is perfect for that. But yeah, it felt like I agree with you. The speed with which he stepped back made it sound prearranged.
Yeah.
Because the gamble with that, the upside with it is you give a sacrificial lamb that should satiate some appetites. The risk is that the perception becomes, oh, Trump's weak again, and we can just roll it. We can just, so that was the downside to taking that particular gamble, if that's the gamble that they deliberately took. But that's why now they have to back everybody, unless the person's an idiot like that guy they nominated for DEA. But the rest, so far, I mean,
oh my God, what the hell is that? I forget. Yeah, that's one pick that I'm just like,
from my guess. That's from the I suspect the chief of staff, who's got a lot of tickets that she owes throughout
She
Florida
has
and
to
DC.
punch.
Yeah.
She has to
So
punch.
some of those names are coming from her, is my read. Because
Well,
even though he was allied with DeSantis, it was just that guy was too loudmouth during the lockdown to have even that told me that somebody key stuck his name under there without it going through. Put it this way, his name did not go through the committee, the transition committee with Gabbard and Kennedy and the rest. That somehow skipped that group, which told me that sounds like Susie Wiles.
that Susie slips it through. Yep. I got to tell you, man, I'm over here praying that Blake gets ATF. I really am. For those who, I mean, you know Blake. I know Blake. This guy he's a good dude. I feel like the party would benefit immensely from younger, more dynamic people like Vivek and Blake and whatnot. You know, like I really do. And I didn't want him to run, which I told him. You know, I didn't want him to run against Kerry, and I didn't think it was a good idea because I thought that he would just lose, and then it would make some people in the base upset. And also, there were some people who were kind of like, you know, that went to Blake who don't like Carrie, who were like, you know what, you can run against her, and I don't like those people. I don't like that side of the party, the consultant class. I think they don't care about the candidate and the future of the, you know, of their future. And he's got a family. He's got a beautiful family, Blake. Like,
Speaking of which, how do we fix that problem? So we've got the census where they screwed us out, the Republicans out of some electoral votes and a bigger House majority.
Oh,
the
God.
Republicans would have a 230 plus House majority, but for the Democratic gerrymandering and the census
Disgusting.
accidentally getting the votes wrong from what the actual population was, not to mention the illegal problem that exists independent of all that. The illegals being counted for representational purposes, which is its own problem. The other constant issue, like you look at all these Senate candidates that ran crap campaigns. It was like listening to Carville rant about the people who ran the Harris campaign, where he just, you know, which was funny.
So good.
He was like, if I had one of these kids come up to me, and these kids like I'm they're so important and their life is being structured around this job and opportunity, and they asked me, you know, they wanted to give me their opinion. I'd tell them what I think. I don't give a what their opinion is.
You think
On this rant that was funny as all get out.
And on fire. And on fire.
Exactly. And there needs to be the equal version of that for Republicans. I mean, is there anybody running campaigns that's competent? Because I don't know of any, to be frank about it. I don't know anybody that's run a House campaign or a Senate campaign that I'd recommend to anybody else. And especially the Senate campaigns were lousy, in my opinion. They were very mid-level.
They were awful.
Yeah,
they were.
I mean,
Except for
they
McCormick's.
did nothing to stand out. I mean, when they knew they had to, when they were running behind Trump, when the tools and the tickets and the means to get there, and yet these people running campaigns are running crap campaigns still. They're doing bad polling, clearly. Almost from what I had heard, almost every Republican Senate candidate thought they were going to win. I mean, for the most part, not like Roy.
Oh, they did. Oh, yes, they did. Oh, yeah. And by the way, people in the McCormick, and I just kind of singled out McCormick there for not running a bad campaign, but the truth is it just wasn't as bad as the rest of them. I'm not saying I think Mark Harris is a really smart guy. I just think that they missed the boat on several things. Look around the map. They didn't carry bucks. Trump became the first Republican to carry bucks since 88. So there's something you were missing there. You did not carry Erie County. You lost Erie County.
They did very little to reach out to the Amish, which had record turnout in Lancaster County.
Can I tell you what they thought? Can I tell you what they thought? Yeah. They thought, and I know this, and by the way, you know, I told them, you need to do something bigger. You need to do an Amos Miller stand-up session. You know, like you need to do something that is going to show that you care about these issues that Trump has now grabbed onto from Robert Kennedy. And this is going to take these voters in Erie. It's going to take these voters in Bucks. It's going to take, you know, all the way from Lancaster to York to Berks, like all these other areas. You're going to run behind Trump. They believed that not only would he not, they believed that he was going to do better in the upscale white suburban areas that have trended Democratic. Yeah, they did, brother. I'm telling you, they did. I can't tell you how many times. I love one of them to death. He's a friend, but I'm like, listen to me and listen to me close, bud. That's not going to happen. You're chasing the great white whale, and your ass is going to end up strapped to the side of that, going for the deep dive. It's not happening. and you're going to run behind Trump, where all of these areas where he's going to pull out these no and low prop voters, and they're like, well, we're building a great get out the vote. And I'm like, that's great. And if they don't want to vote for you, doesn't matter. Guess what? Because we've polled everywhere, every state, every platform. These no and low prop voters said one person and one agenda only. If I could vote, if you could motivate me to, it would only be to vote for Donald Trump. The only way to make sure that you were going to get those voters in like a unified application was to be like Trump. 100%. I'm going to defend Amos Miller. I'm going to make America healthy again. I'm going to this. And McCormick had some really good moments during the debate, but guys, he ran behind Trump in his own fucking county, Allegheny County. And he didn't because he ran better with upscale whites and then somehow did worse with working class. He did worse with everybody. He ran behind Trump in Buckingham, the one I was just talking to you about, Buckingham Lower 1, which is more educated. The CEO of Merck lives there. All right. Like this is where that's what that really captures perfectly the identity of that township. All right. And he ran behind Trump there. He ran behind Trump in Lower 2. He ran behind Trump in Center County. He ran behind Trump in Pike. He ran behind Trump in Luzerne. He ran behind Trump in Monroe. He ran, all over Scranton, Biden town. He ran behind, he won just enough to squeak it out.
What can basically Trump world do to fix the problem of this small cadre of political consultants controlling campaigns by controlling the money and the media for those campaigns, and in the process destroying the messaging of those campaigns because of their own conflicts of interest or compromise or lack of political acumen? What can Trump world do at the RNC, RSCC, RSCC, other levels like that to fix that problem? Because most people don't realize is how they have orchestrated it behind the scenes. So this small group has a de facto monopoly, and that even challengers are told, okay, no money support, no ground support, no get out the vote support, no unless you hire our list of vendors. And that's the problem, is that list of vendors. Anybody that's on that vendors list is someone who should never be hired rather than be hired on average.
And then ironically, their candidates come to me anyway and are like, hey, will you look at this and tell me what you think? No, I'm not like going to get, that's called an in-kind campaign contribution. You got a pollster, have him give you a damn session. I don't poll for you. I think the best thing to do, Robert, it's like, can you reform these entities, right? He tried with Steve Daines running the NRSC. Now he's got Tim Scott there, and we'll see, because Tim Scott, I have been very hard on him over the years, as everybody knows. He was in my donor friend's living room back years ago, saying it's good Trump lost in 2020 because he's going to kill our brand with black and brown people. He really did believe that. However, now he knows it's not true, and it appears that Tim Scott has had an epiphany. The problem is he's still got a lot of money. It was a revolving door with him in Wall Street in his office, and I don't like that shit. Defense
in
too.
Boeing.
Defense. Boeing.
He and Boeing are butt buddies.
Huge butt buddies. Yep. And I don't like that. So we'll see how that goes. But I almost feel like, is it worth reforming these, or do you just do what Musk does? Musk is talking about doing, where he had his own, get out the vote. He did not engage with any of the old infrastructure. He built his own. They knocked me 3 times. I still have their literature in the office. I'm keeping it for memorabilia, right? That was something. That was really something. Now he's talking about this primary opposition organization, and I really think that is probably the way to go. You just kind of have to scare them. It runs too deep, right? So you have Brian Jack, who everyone in Trump world loves, yet he's all buddy-buddy with people like Jessica Patterson, who hate Trump's guts. The one who wants to take over for California now is another Trump hater. And it's like, all of these people are interwoven. And, Devin Nunes is a great guy, but he also does some really bad recommendations, he does. So do you try to reform these entities, or do you just make a bigger, better one, which they're all afraid of, and you starve the beast anyway? Because Trump is able to take all of the money, as you and I know full well. Like, if he wants to start a project, he's going to relegate them to running to the Ricketts family for money. That's it. That's all they're going to do. Because eventually, even Richard and Liz Uline are going to donate to Musk. I mean, they're smart people. They're not dumb. They're not going to throw their money away. Right now, you have some people who aren't dumb. They just think, I don't like Trump and I would rather waste my money. So those are like the Ricketts and stuff, but that's very limited pool of people. I think that the best thing maybe is to just take them away, take the donor base away from them, because I don't think they're ever going to change. Like right now, a couple of days ago, I got a call from someone out in California telling me about what the plan is, what the situation is. These people are like praising Duarte's race. It's not his fault they lost. This is a perfect example, actually, of why they lost. He's a prick and nobody wants to work for him. But all of the people that were referred, like use my vendors, they were idiots who didn't realize the direction the Central Valley was going. Maybe they could win a Republican primary, but they had no idea how to keep that seat, Robert. They had no clue that Trump was going to outrun Duarte. I, 2 years ago, sat down with Kathy Abernathy and NRCC's Sam, right? And told them both that they would end up in the position they are in right now. And oh, by the way, Mike Garcia is going to lose too. And they were like, yeah, crazy. This guy's out of his mind. I mean, they laughed, they scoffed. They did not think Donald Trump was going to sweep the Central Valley like that. They didn't. They thought you had to be an amnesty supporting rhino in the mold of David Valadao and Mike Garcia. And that's the only way you're going to make gains in California. Well, guess what? Michelle Steele, gone. Ken Calvert, real close, buddy. Mike Garcia, right? Even young Kim didn't win super impressive for that area. She really did not. And then you have Duarte down in a blaze of glory, right? So they don't know. It's like they're not going to change. So at the end of the day, can you really reform their institutions, or do you just make them irrelevant and take all their money? I mean, that's what it comes down, because the donors don't want to lose. They don't want to lose. And they're at a point now where it's like, God, if you gave to anybody but Donald Trump, you probably wasted your damn money. Right? Look at where we're at. McCormick did a great job raising. And by the way, they did that on their own. Sean Parnell, that absentee ballot operation that was supported by many others, including 10X Votes and Scott Pressler. And so they didn't do it alone, but they stepped outside of that realm of people. And they said, you know what? We're going to, the Mark Harris guy knows Pennsylvania, right? His partner, they know Pennsylvania. Whether or not, 100% tone to it. Like I said, their theory of the case was wrong. It was wrong. But they're willing to learn. You know what I mean? They're willing to learn. And they boxed out everybody else. And they brought in Sean Parnell to raise money. Let's bring in the MAGA vet. Let's get him, to tell people the importance of getting on the permanent absentee ballot list, getting your friends to vote, and getting them on there as well to make it super easy. They did not go through those channels. So look, those who did, like, look at Mike Rogers. He did go through those channels, and look what happened, right? So I really feel like the best thing, Robert, is to just avoid them and make them totally irrelevant. I really do. I just don't think they're ever going to change. I wish we could go back in time and you could see how smug Kathy was. It encapsulates the problem perfectly. She was like, am I listening to this TV pundit? I'm super smart. I know this area. Well, look at you now, Kathy. Look at you now. Mike Garcia publicly called me a dumbass. Come on. They're not going to change, brother. They're not going to change. If he was a man, if he was a big man who was capable of personal growth and learning, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. Don't you think I would have gotten a phone call? Like, shit, man, you were right. I lost. I'm sorry, bro. Like, my bad. Men apologize when they're wrong. My bad. I should have listened. Or not even. I should have gave what you had to say more credence. You mean you should have seen the crowd? Very lovely dinner, right? Very lovely dinner. Super friendly and nice. Had a great after the speech interview. But I'm sitting there looking at all their faces as I'm talking. I can see it on their faces. They don't want to hear any of this. They want me to tell them how to make San Diego white again, how to win white rich votes again. That's what they wanted. And I didn't give them what they wanted. I gave them what they needed, But you know it, man. You give speeches, you know it. You're sitting and you're watching the crowd's faces, and when you're in the lion's den, brother, okay? And they're looking at you like, who the hell hired this guy? Who brought this guy in? Right? You know what I'm talking about. I know you do. And it's like, God, not only are they not listening, they're about to throw tomatoes at you.
How do you think they will be going forward? In other words, how much does the Republican establishment, the political class, some of the organizers in the individual states recognize that the implications of 2024?
Yeah, I really feel like they're gonna try to. I just lost a friend recently, Tom Purcell. He used to host a show called Liberty Never Sleeps. But before then, it was just like podcast. Before then, his like claim to fame was he was the youngest Mensa, in Arizona. And I met him years ago when I was doing I was an editor for somewhere that he wrote guest columns, and he wrote a book called The Return of the Kings. And he just died of cancer recently, and he had been battling it for a while. And I'm telling you, this book should be a staple for everybody, because the truth is, I don't think they ever go away. I think they hide under the surface, like Tom always suggested they will forever do. And they're just going to sit there like the monarchs of old and wait for a chance to strike, because that's who they are by nature. They don't learn. They never do. It's not really their goal or their aim. The aim is like influence and power. So if you, if you're a part of that class and you find yourself in a position where it's just unfriendly environment for you at that time, you just kind of hunker down and you try to chameleon yourself the best you can. And then when your moment comes, you strike. And then it's like, that's why I called it the Return of the Kings. They never are going to go away. You just have to be vigilant, like that they're, that they're there. And they know that they're there, and you forever just keep them down, brother. Because I really don't think, we're gonna just have to wait, like, for the Republican Party to totally and truly change. We're just gonna have to tolerate them, keep an eye on them, and wait until they croak. Generations, time deals with this stuff. It does. Time deals with this stuff. Look at the left right now. It would never be the party, or at least not outwardly, that they are right now if they still were dominated by the young protesters of the 60s. And who the hell cares about Syria? Who cares? I'm not dying for Ukraine. They waited. Those people are gone, dead or Republican. You know what I mean? And now they're totally different. It's not that they were always that party. Look, go back to World War I, World War II. They were always that party. They just hid. They hid, brother, beneath the surface. Tom's right, man. His thesis is right. I'm not sure you can ever change them. You got to kind of tolerate them, monitor them, and then wait for time to just sweep that generation of them away. And then you have to wait for the next one, because they're always coming. They never leave. They're always coming back. He's right, man. I just think Trump's going to have to figure out some way to govern and tolerate them until like Musk and others can put together something that's a more effective way to get rid of them. Like you said, selective primarying too, because they have to get out of these positions where they have essentially a veto on the president's sovereign power to have his own government. That's bullshit. That's not how our government works. And Robert, it always drives me nuts, because I guess I'm just getting sick of listening to I'm not getting sick of listening to voters. I'm getting sick of them not being listened to. You know what I mean? Like, and then like as a pollster, you hear that all the time. And I'm just, who the hell do these people think they are? Is like a point at where I'm at. How many times does the public have to tell you and express in no uncertain terms what they want you to do? And they just don't care. And it always comes from Republicans. Like, the betrayal always comes from Republicans. And it's just like at some point that's got to end. So I think now is the time. Because voters are ready to tolerate a lot of instability. They fully understand what they voted for. Like, you see that idiot Democratic strategist on CNN. I could be deported. Voters didn't vote for this. Yeah, they did. They fully understood the decision in this election, and they decided, tear it down. It wasn't like 16, where they didn't really understand what they were asking for. They knew they wanted change, but they didn't know what it was going to look like. They didn't know what they were going to sacrifice, how unstable it was going to be, how volatile everything was going to be. They know now. You called him Hitler, Mussolini, Mao, all wrapped up into one. He raped a woman that nobody would touch. get real. He raped a woman in a dressing room. 91 felony counts. I say it all the time, but it's worth noting. More than any member of the 5 families has ever been indicted. Okay, in that area, or any area for that matter. Freaking Gaji didn't get it that much in Chicago. I mean, this is nuts. This is insane. Through everything they threw at him, they were going to take his business. They were going to throw him in jail for the rest of his natural life. They put his supporters in jail. They drug grandmas and grandfathers out of their homes in Michigan and Arizona and indicted them for supporting Donald Trump. I mean, over and over, they knew exactly what was at stake here. And as far as immigration goes, they want everybody gone. Everybody who came here under Biden, who they view to be illegitimate, they want gone. They feel they were tricked. They were lied to. The guy was senile. It was not Trump's fault with COVID. You guys probably dropped that on us to get rid of Donald Trump. This is what the public thinks. They don't believe the FBI. They don't view them as credible. The Justice Department is not a credible institution anymore. The media is an effing joke. They want it ripped down. They do. They feel like they were robbed. And guess what? They were robbed. Could you imagine, Robert, the housing market was this close to full restoration before they dropped this pandemic on us. Think about it. The Trump economy was so strong, but it still was only firing on 3 cylinders. The housing wasn't back yet. And then builder confidence is exploding, right? New residential construction statistics from the Commerce Department exploding. We're right about to get it all back. And since the Great Recession, and then boom, the Wu flu. I mean, they're mad, man. They're mad, and they got every right to be. Every right to be. There's a long-winded way of saying it, but they know exactly what they voted for. And these Republican senators, I know they're going to try to just kind of weather this storm, but it should be a storm, and voters are ready for that storm now, like they weren't before. That's why we had the seasick voter in 2020. Remember? A seasick voter. And they just wanted like Trump to like kind of hold their head when they vomited, and Trump doesn't do that. You know, so it was like, all right, I just want the boat to stop rocking. I just want it to stop rocking. Now they're like, rock that shit. Let's go. It's different electorate. Totally. What the hell time is it? 3:42. Damn. What do you make of this? I'm going to play this because you, like I said earlier, you definitely have a different perspective on things than most people. You know, I mean, and I think like you'll understand where I'm coming from with this. I kind of feel bad for this guy, but at the same time, I feel like it's the end for this kind of rhetoric. It's the end of tolerating this. It's not like, while we understand and feel bad for your plight, the fact of the matter is like you're not telling the truth. Like, so, this is not what happened in this case. So to get back to this was BLM's reaction. We had people being arrested immediately, which was incredible. That's a change. NYPD was cuffing people immediately when they started getting out of control. But here's what was said at the press conference after this. You ready?
Vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Right.
I'm tired.
And listen, I feel for him. I understand. Like, I mean, look, I think white America needs to try to understand the experience of different people better. But at the same token, I think Black America needs to try to understand other people's experience as well. We all will benefit from that if we do that. And the bottom line is, he wasn't just up being loud. This is a man with a history of mental illness, schizophrenic, threatening people's lives. I played the tape before. People were on their friggin' hands and knees sheltering in place like Russia just dropped a bomb or something. Like, they were scared out of their minds. And this wasn't about some guy just being loud, brother. Like, I just feel like BLM is just gonna fade into irrelevance. I mean,
it was always kind of
scandal.
a fake. Yeah, it was always kind of a fake organization from the get-go. But it was not rooted in the local community, not in the Black pastor community, Black business community, Black school teacher. Any of these sort of anchors of the African American community were not founders of BLM.
Yeah.
So BLM's always been a fake organization meant for money and political turmoil, similar to the Black Panthers in many respects.
Very.
In New York, the race grift is as old as the city.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, isn't it? Is it losing its staying power? Like the
Oh,
civil
yeah, I think
rights.
it always gets. I think it's always been tiresome, kind of in New York. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, it's like people put up with it.
Oh,
That they might get
Sharpton
excited
again.
short term with it, with Al Sharpton, and I
Yeah.
mean, Sharpton's probably the master of it. I don't know if
Yeah.
anybody's done the race grift more. The guy who manipulated race the most as a politician in New York was Ed Koch. Nobody did it more than he did it. Like if he's in trouble, he would make choose between a black and Jewish community pick getting their hospital, and just get him enraged and make sure that he gets the most net votes out of the end of it. But that's just the nature. I mean, that's what Ken Phillips talked about. That's why he
Yep.
had an acute awareness of racial politics. He grew up in New York, and he was like, if you know New York, New York's how the Irish are going, the Italians are going, the Jews are going, the Orthodox are going, black voters are going, the Puerto Ricans are going, the Jamaicans are going, the Russians are going, because you've got so many little worlds all connected to one another in that city.
Yeah, I feel like there may be like something there though, Robert. Like there's like Phillips reacting to the backlash of racial politics.
It's kind of like, it's early 70s.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
we went through a crash course in the late 60s. The response in
Yep.
the 70s was one of kind of malaise, kind of don't care anymore, kind of, I mean, I call it, we went into the Dirty Harry era, which sort of captures
That's
that
right.
cinematically very effectively. And I mean,
And
and that's Amanda Milius, no less. That's her father, John Milius, the one who wrote the script for that, and she's the one who wrote the documentary, the plot against the president, that introduced me to Kash Patel, who now looks like is on pace to be our next FBI
great
director.
Great guy, by the way.
Maybe the only
Great guy.
ethical FBI director in the history of the FBI.
He's a
I don't know
great
of
guy.
do you know of an ethical FBI director? I can't think of any. They're all
Oh my
crooks and creeps for
God.
the most part, right?
Oh my God.
Just think about the list. It's like it gets creepier and creepier.
Oh my God. Not a one. Not one. I can't. Hey,
Isn't that
chat.
amazing?
Chat.
Our lead law enforcement organization is just like perv, weirdo, freak,
crooks.
sicko, crook, criminal, secret spy. I mean, it's just like it's one long litany of horrendous human beings. Cash would be like a resurrection of that agency.
He would be a complete change. He'd be one of a kind. He would.
He would need to fire everybody at 7th floor. You can't leave.
Oh God,
One thing Trump can't do is leave all the traitors and saboteurs around again.
Main justice got to get cleared out. Civil rights division's got to get cleared out. If the civil rights division was worth anything, its entire purpose is geared toward what happened in Bucks County. So first of all, no ballots here, folk. Go home. No ballots today. All right. That's exactly what Democrats did to black voters during the Jim Crow era and post-Reconstruction. That's what they did. We have no ballots. They did that to Republicans in Bucks County. And then, of course, the counting of votes that were clearly illegal votes. This is what the Civil Rights Division was instituted for. It's to protect the disenfranchisement or the violation of civil rights of certain groups of people. They don't
by
give
state judges, by state politicians, by
that's
state
right.
cops.
By state of yes.
These people that have targeted Trump and Trump world should all be put under should be put under investigation. People who went past what the law allowed them to do in New York, in the prosecutor in Georgia, these people should be put under meaningful federal civil rights investigation. And so should all the corrupt governmental actors that are busy violating people's rights on behalf of their favored pals and buddies, which is basically uniform across the country. You could have a new case every other day with ease of high profile nature if the Civil Rights Division actually did its job rather than use weaponized federal power to force local law enforcement to become branches of the corrupt FBI.
Leave it to a guy like, if you guys want to know what kind of a guy Kash Patel is, having a discussion about how you explain the government's behavior to like even young children, like claiming your president is a Russian traitor. I mean, Kash signs a book that he writes for children about what they did to Trump with Crossfire Hurricane. And Don Smith played middleman. He's like, here, give this to Rich. And he can explain it to his kids like this. I get it. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to read this to my kids, but I read it and I'm like, wow, this is actually a really good way to answer a kid's questions that they had, because of course they did. Like, why are they doing this to our president? Is it stuff they say about our president true? That's horrible. It's like, no, it's not. I can't explain. It's difficult to explain. Like, the government's corrupt and wants to stop Trump, and like, here's Cash writes a children's book and make it a simple, easy, not scary way to explain why they were doing what they were doing to Trump. It was incredible. Like, leave it to Cash Patel to do something like that. He's also just a really cool guy for people who don't know him. Very down to earth. If you're looking for like somebody who is like you to represent you in the executive branch, I mean, the guy is like one of the best guys to just sit there and shoot the shit with and talk about like non-political stuff. He's just a cool guy. Let's blast through some of these, Robert, before we got a boogie here. Yeah. Emperor Soft Turtle says, it was embarrassing it got here, but thank God my state did not make 2 humiliating, disgusting verdicts in the same year. Or is it 3? There have just been so many. Yeah. Look, again,
that's because Trump is somebody distant and from them, whereas it was a great job of Penny's closing argument, his legal team, that they said, okay, you're sitting in that train car, and the door's open. Which person do you want to see coming onto that train? Do you want to see Daniel Penny coming onto that train, or do you want to see Joshua Neely coming onto that train?
Yeah.
And that answered everybody's question down deep. They knew from that point, we want Penny coming on. We don't want Neely coming on. So that meant verdict, not guilty.
You're going to see, too, all the MSNBC and CNN commentators, I predict, say that they invoked the elevator thing. Yeah, they kind of did, and you know what? Because at some point, even if you're political, you still have to think to yourself, what if you were on that train? What if your loved one was on that train? Who would you have wanted there? And it's like, reality always wins, folks. Reality won that eventually. Anyway.
It used to be, so a buddy of mine somehow found ways to take clips from movies and make them into, put them into the Microsoft Word, so that whenever you made a mistake or other things, you'd hear the line from the movie. And it was he had all the ones from A Few Good Men in. So it's like you make a mistake, instead of a spelling error, you with a beep. All of a sudden, you get Jack Nicholson saying, I'm going to tear the eyes out of your head and piss into your dead skull and stuff like that. But I always think of Nicholson saying, you want me on that wall. You need me on
that wall.
The places you don't want to talk about at cocktail parties. But apparently Nicholson so believed in that line, in that whole speech, he kept doing it over and over again. When they were just doing blank, when they were just cameras were down or anything else, he would just launch again. Because he's like, down deep. Yeah, you do need that character on that wall. To order those code reds. So but I think that's what we saw examples of with that verdict.
Right, I did.
Exactly. That was brilliant.
So good, man. You're so good. We get a lot of these. Believe me, we get a lot of these. But I'd be happy to take a look at it for you. But I'm not a campaign runner. But Robert and I get a lot of these. He wants to run for governor of Minnesota. 29 years old. I don't know what H-Mung and crippled. I don't know what that means. But looking at past elections, I have to run as a Dem to win. I would love to get Rich and Barnes on board to help get the nominee, running as a MAGA Dem during a general.
There's a big Hmong population in the Twin Cities.
Oh, okay. I got you. Okay. Oof.
What a weird place, by the way. How do you go from that part of Cambodia and Hmong area? And somebody in the State Department said, "Let's send you to the Twin Cities."
That's what I was just gonna say. Like,
how did the Somalians. It's like, why they send the Somalians to the Twin Cities? By the way, they're going to cover it with Syria. I think they may have now covered the whole Wesley Clark list. Remember, Wesley Clark said in the mid-90s that as soon as after the Soviet Union fell, that he was privy to a conversation with higher ups at the Pentagon, State Department, and CIA, where they said they were going to replace like 6 countries. And I think it was like Syria, Libya, Iraq, Somalia, Sudan. I think
7 countries, 5 years. General Wesley Clark.
And almost everyone now is gone. Has been now replaced with the collapse of Assad.
Man, wow. Here's you know what? Let's let me bring that up, because that's fascinating, man. I forgot all about that. This is 7 countries, 5 years, General Wesley Clark. So he had said Well, in a way, but history doesn't repeat itself exactly twice. What I did warn about when I testified in front of Congress in '02, I said, if you don't want to worry about a state, it shouldn't be Iraq, blah, blah, blah. But he goes on, it's blah, 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 Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, and the Sudan. And then, of course, Iran. That's the last one. That would be the last one.
Iran's the
Robert,
only
I
one
guess.
that hasn't fallen. All the
Yeah.
others have now fallen.
When, of course, that's their golden goose, brother. You know it is. Like
Oh, yeah.
Iraq was, but
They've
now it's
never given up
gold.
losing because they had the Shah's Iran, right? That was
Yeah.
their dream. See, that was the CIA MI6 operation. They ran the country for almost 20 years. I mean, they've been promising versions of that ever since they decided World War I. Hey, go fight the Ottomans and we'll give you Greater Syria. Greater Syria is going to be Greater Arabia, basically. Then they sort of broke, but they promised different people different things. They promised Jews one thing, promised Palestinians another thing, promised other Arab groups something else, promised even other Arab groups something different. So they all had to, and then of course they were competing with each other because the French wanted their piece, the English wanted their piece, Americans wanted their piece because of that, liquid gold.
Man, I'll tell you, it's like sometimes I think that our intelligence services, when it comes to like Iran, it's like not well thought out statecraft at all. It's just really a matter of a measuring contest. They lost control of the Shah, they lost control of that government, and they don't like losing. It's the same thing with these prosecutors. I feel real bad for Daniel Penny because I've been in that situation where you just get like shotgun blasted by an aggressive, out of control prosecutor who really doesn't care about like what he's doing or she's doing. The goal is to just simply get that person and win. And it's like, I've personally been there, so I know like what that is. And I don't know, man, I feel like our foreign policy has been hijacked by people like that, and it's not real. It never has been a matter of what's smart. Same thing, you can apply that to Russia as well. Like any statecraft would tell you that actually you want relations with Russia. They're in the sphere of influence with China. China's the real problem. So you want to build a bandwagon and a coalition, a balancing coalition that includes Russia, includes India. You don't want to drive Russia into the arms of the Chinese or drive India into the arms of the Chinese. That's incredibly stupid, but they don't care about what's smart or like, it's really to them, it's about, well, it didn't go the way we wanted it to. The Soviet Union fell and we wanted it to go a different way. And this guy, Putin, took it from us, and then Ukraine is a perfect example. Color revolution. Aha, we got him back. We took his president from him. And it's like stupid. It's reckless. It's careless. It's stupid. And they don't care because that's not what it's about for them. It's about winning. This is Eric. Rich, we need to get 10x vote to drive out sleepy Republicans in the midterms. I feel like we can make history with a Republican sweep. 10x is not going anywhere. In fact, they're doing some bookkeeping. I hope to have some real numbers for you guys real soon. I can tell you this. The 1.7 in Michigan that was identified, over 900,000 did vote, which is insane. It was wildly successful. That's why, by the way, people want to know, why did Michigan vote to the right of Wisconsin? 10x votes. 10x votes. I'm just telling you. And Tucker Carlson for throwing a spotlight on the project. Look, they came to me and they were like, I think you're right with these no prop voters. How do we get them to vote? That's it. And that's what we did. And Michigan was never supposed to vote to the right of Wisconsin. Never. But they did have a presence in Wisconsin. They just didn't have as big of a presence in Wisconsin. And Charlie Kirk, he had no presence basically in Wisconsin. Very little. So then you had Pressler and 10X and Sean Parnell's group and project that was working with McCormick. Plus you had Elon Musk all in Pennsylvania, which is why Pennsylvania was such a roundabout ass kicking, So this is Joshua Powell. I ran in Michigan's 25th State House District in Wayne County. I had limited grassroots only funding because of where this seat is, but I broke 41%. Running as a populist Republican where they told me I'd never get 30%. Wow, Joshua. Bravo, man. And by the way, I knew I recognized your name. Yeah, that's fantastic. This is what I'm talking about. Wow, that's incredible. And by the way, Joshua, you probably remember the old Oh man, I can't remember his name, but he was like the chair of the Wayne County Republican Party. He was technically a libertarian. He used to have a very different view as well, that there should be a much more like populist tinge to the party. And I think I want to go in. I want to sit down with Brenda and I want to talk about how people just stole Tlaib and others, from that side of the party, just stole her seat. And that was the plan. And that would have been a beautiful plan. And instead, when he won the primary, he fired all of his staff to get those idiot consultants and vendors that Robert was talking about before. And he got his ass kicked. I mean, thoroughly worse than Republicans usually get their ass kicked. And it was like very, very much a shame. Brenda never got the phone call, even though she was expecting it. All that was set up ahead of time. Don Smith had that down. Me and him had this, he was smart. It was going to work. Was he going to win? No, but he would have put up a way better showing than that. And she was going to tell basically her black constituency that it's not smart to go with these radical leftists. They robbed me, which means they robbed you. You should go with this guy who gave us commitments to make sure that he's always looking out for our people and our community. And Karl Rove sends in the troops. They run a white-only campaign, and that's what happens, and he never to be heard from again. Don only got him a 35-point primary win. What does Don know? Anyway, DOJ needs to investigate the company hired after the United Healthcare data breach and Pelosi's stock purchase. And now we have a left-wing lunatic. I was going to show it. We don't really have the time. But as it turns out, as Jack Posobiec and I were trying to tell people from the jump, this was not a professional hit. I mean, as it turns out, this was a left-wing anti-capitalist that they now have in custody who has a manifesto that's against capitalism and free markets and blah, blah, blah. So, what do you think about that? How does Pelosi get away with
to start the left-wing revolution? Is that what he's trying to do?
Basically kill the CEO of United Healthcare and create a spark and set it all ablaze, Yep. Unbelievable. But don't you find it funny? Like somebody like this, decides at this point to do this, and they have, you got people like RFK, which we didn't even get to. God, how brilliant was that of Trump to invite those big pharma people to come to dinner. And he's like, oh, by the way, I hope you don't mind. I asked Robert to join us.
Yeah. Exactly.
Bobby to join us. You don't mind, do you guys? You don't mind. The For Freedoms poll might have been the smartest move of this cycle. I'm serious. I'm dead serious. I mean, 2% here, 4% there.
Yeah.
Matters, Robert. It matters.
And the smart candidate will embrace it, and that will be the future. The Trump was smart enough to do it. The question is, who picks up the mantra next?
Yeah, I think Vance is a smart dude. I really do. Now, I think when people will say, well, you can't, vice presidents don't make good successors. Well, that's not really true. Joe Biden did it after, of course, Trump, but he didn't do it right away. But also, we're in a different time now, folks. I'm sick of Cook Political Report and Sean Trendy, our buddy Sean, comparing shit to 1930. The country's dead. Stop it. Just stop it. The country's totally different now. The best way to get rid, I want to read this one. The best way to get rid of the rhino loser consultants is to put out the world that they have dirt on Clinton. Oh my God.
What's amazing is how many of them have worked for Clintons in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
If they've been around old enough, like David Brock, went from Republicans to Clinton to then, back and forth, and Chris Ruddy and Newsmax, now multimillionaire, who's been on every side of every issue.
I'll tell you, this is a good question for you, Robert. I'm curious what you would answer this with. For the 2028 Democrat primaries, which direction will they take? A, double down in woke ideology with the AOC wing. B, pivot towards populism with a Ro Khanna. Or C, return to their establishment crony capitalism censorship roots with a Josh Shapiro, Gretchen Whitmer, or Gavin Newsom type. And that's D Wong on Locals. Locals always has a really, really, I mean, you all do, but really, that's a really good question. A really good take. What do you think, man? I mean, I know it's early, But
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the neoliberal wing has control at this moment,
still,
and there's this,
yeah.
and there's, I mean, who's gonna? Is there an appetite for populism within the Democratic Party? Yes. Who's going to be the candidate to run on it? I don't
But the
see any.
voters, you mean? The
Yeah,
voters, you mean?
voters
There's an
have an
appetite.
appetite for
Yeah.
it, but I mean, Bernie's too old, and I don't see who's going to pick up
Sure.
on any aspect of the. No, I think Bernie's making smart. It'll be very interesting to watch. So a smart Democrat will try to pick off the Kennedy Gabbard wing of the Trump coalition,
Yeah.
to build with the Democratic coalition and build a future majority. And what they would be smart is to vote for Kennedy's confirmation, to vote for Gabbard's confirmation. Bernie has already picked up on that, though he's, I think, again, too old. I can't see him running again. But the question is who else out there is like that at the Democratic level? I don't see anybody. Governor-wise, mayor-wise, House, Senate. I don't see anybody. I'm like, that's somebody that could campaign credibly as a populist or a change agent.
Well, yeah. Well, because we basically have like a group. We basically have a group, like you said, Shapiro. There's some others. Whoops, sorry. There's some others like Whitmer. I really think they're in the driver's seat right now. I do.
Yeah,
I agree.
Shapiro,
I agree.
Whitmer, Newsom, the
And
crowd
Bashir
that Wall
even
Street is
maybe.
okay with, that big tech is okay with, that Hollywood is okay with, the neoliberal elite in the defense industry is okay with. So it's going to be somebody from the.
That's
So
right.
Buttigieg is going to be there
Oh,
campaigning
God
heavily, and he's
Almighty.
got big money in that world. So you're going to have Buttigieg, you're going to have Whitmer, you're going to have Shapiro, you're going to have Newsom. Those are probably going to be the lead candidates. A smart populist could come in and steal it from all of them. I just don't know who that would be at this point, because I don't know of anyone that fits the script.
They can't get money either. Like Dean Phillips has some kind of populist roots. They can't get money.
Right.
He has that Minnesota populist vibe from being a Democrat out there, and he couldn't get any track. Even if it wasn't an incumbent sitting president, he wouldn't have done it.
Kennedy and Gabbard, and they're now part of the Trump team.
Now they're going to be in the Trump administration, both of them. A lot of people tell me they think Gabbard's going to be hard to get through, and my response to them is get her through. Because
exactly. That's simple. Just find a way, one way, shape, or form of making sure she gets in.
He put her in the perfect position to integrate these movements. He put Bobby Kennedy in the perfect position to integrate these movements. Why don't they just shut the hell up and take his direction, take his lead? He obviously knows what he's doing. I mean, he's now won twice an election. You have no prayer to win. None. And he outran you everywhere. It's just unbelievable stupidity. Last question, and we'll boogie, because I got Laura calling me, which means probably kid stuff. Spoke with a youngin about why they voted for Trump, but not Sam Brown. Political illiterate, doesn't understand that Republicans and Senate, or reps and Senate, are needed to support the Trump agenda, and that's sad. So, look, they're new to the process. The new low to no prop, especially younger voters, are not going to understand this. Robert and I try telling you guys, not everybody is like fixated on politics the way we all are, and they don't see things like that. And same thing, Jack Posobiec agreed with Barnes and I all the time on his show. He would constantly cite it, say, I know this state in Pennsylvania, it will be hard for McCormick. He's going to run behind him, and it's going to be close. Because you're not going to have these normies who are just going to vote for McCormick because Trump. They're not going to do that. And we tried over and over to explain this and get through to people. That's a perfect example. When Carrie Lake, she just didn't have the money. They didn't give her a dime. They gave it to friggin' Larry Hogan, a never Trump scumbag, little man, tiny little man. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. Okay, well, you got your ass kicked, and Trump's going to be the president again. So, your mother, man. I'm saying, these people, I have no respect for them. Robert, zero respect. I don't think they deserve a dirt bag on the street deserves more respect in my mind than they do. Why? Because maybe that dirtbag is having a hard time and they can't control their situation because of the shitty world that the ruling class has created for them. What's their excuse? What's his excuse to be such a tiny little man? He knew he was going to lose. And he had to be tiny little man. Oh, I'm not voting for Trump. I left it blank. Okay, well, you got crushed, bro. And by the way, your pollster's a piece of shit. You were never ahead. You wasted all that money on it. Could have went to Kerry Lake. Could have went to Sam Brown. Could have went to Eric Hovda, who had to front his own money. Eric had to pay everything himself. Even McCormick, he spent a ton of his own money. This is ridiculous. I'm done making fun of these losers for the day. Tell people, Robert, where they can find you. What you got going
you
on.
can find we'll put up all the political picks that made a lot of money this year. We put up odds on each of the where Trump's margin of victory would be, where the Senate margin of victory would be. I think we won 90% of those. People who went from anywhere doubled their money to quintupled it. So all of that at sports, and we have college football playoffs coming up. All that stuff, information as well, is up at sportspicks.locals.com.
If you made money off of Robert's picks this year, drop it in the chat, because I saw them before when he wasn't able to join us. And I'm telling you, for 2 weeks, I was reading your messages about, dude, I made this much. People made some money, Robert. Like, I was like stunned. I don't know why I don't do it. Laura's like constantly busting my balls. She's like, you could literally move the market. I'm like, Laura, I don't know. That's like legit, like, but I don't think that's legit. And I'm just not, I don't know. I'm old school, I guess. I don't know, brother. But yeah, definitely check out Robert's site, man. You did well. You did really well. And I'll see you next week. All right. Maybe we'll have the Christmas poll up at that time to talk about. Should be pretty cool.
Sounds good.
All right. Robert Barnes, ladies and gentlemen, go check him out. Sportspicks.locals.com. I'm going to fade out with this because I'll do it throughout the Inside the Number show too, but I just want to give them a little bit of an extra here for always being there and making the show possible along with you guys. All right, there is going to be, folks, big change on the horizon. Obviously, Trump's coming back, right? RFK's taking over the CDC, NIH, FDA. Let's get ready for a shakeup. Even RFK posted himself, the FDA's war on public health is about to end, calling out their suppression of treatments like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and essential vitamins. The wellness company is already ahead of the curve with emergency kits that are stocked with these limited access medications. These kits cut through the red tape, especially during the holidays, when getting sick during travel is the norm. Be prepared for over 30 illnesses without stepping into an urgent care or tackling the issue head on before it develops. I'm talking about the same, CPAC, right? Amoxicillin, everything you need to take control of your health. Their guidebook outlines common treatments for things like UTIs, strep throat, bacterial infections, respiratory illnesses, and more. All it takes is filling out a digital intake form and your kit arrives to your door in 1 to 2 weeks. And they even have emergency kits for kids. No more sick inconveniences during the holidays. Order your kit now by heading to twc.health/TPP. Use that code TPP at checkout to save up to $30 off, and you get free shipping. U.S. residents only. Again, twc.health/TPP. Obviously, for the People's Pundit, get your emergency medical kit today. Laura and I have several of them. The kid one is now on the agenda and is a must. Have peace of mind for the holidays. Who the hell wants to be sick and ruin the holiday, right? Now with urgent care. All right, folks, don't forget, Wednesday, noon Eastern time, Inside the Numbers. And of course, later that night, I'll be on my buddy Sean on Battleground Live at 5, Savage Wednesdays. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, nothing but love for you. Be safe during the holiday season. Take time to enjoy it. All right, it is a season to be holly and jolly. Take time to enjoy it. You got a lot to be thankful for and a lot to look forward to. All right, guys, that's it. I'm out. Signing off. Later. Or, as Laura likes to say, deuces.